Blessings, beloveds. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. And let's spend some time talking about the lunar eclipse coming up on the 5th and 6th of June, depending on where you are on the planet. It's in Sagittarius at 15 degrees, 15 and a half degrees of Sagittarius. There is some noise around me at the moment. It's just that part of the day and the traffic. Sorry to detract, but I just want to just let you guys know that there are some noise interferences, and it's just not much I can do about that. So, and I need to work on, my videos and my work and so forth. So I apologize for the noise. Okay, this lunar eclipse is going to be quite potent, I think. I feel. The month of June itself is very potent. It's very loaded. There's a lot going on. Mercury will go retrograde on the 18th of June. Neptune will go retrograde on the 23rd of June. And then Venus will finally go direct on the 25th of June. So June's a big month. We have the lunar eclipse on the 5th and 6th of June, as I said, and then we have a solar eclipse on the solstice on the 21st of June at 0 degrees of Cancer. And then a couple of weeks later, we have another lunar eclipse at about 14 degrees of Capricorn. So those of you that are Capricorn, Cancer, Sag, Gemini, who have planets at the degrees that are close to these eclipses will be most likely impacted. Today I'm only going to talk about the lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. So if you have planets at anywhere between 14 degrees and 20 degrees of Sagittarius or Gemini, this lunar eclipse will either form a conjunction or opposition to any of those planets in your chart. If you have planets in Pisces or Virgo at those same degrees, this lunar eclipse will form what's called a square to those planets in your chart. It is usually said that the conjunctions and oppositions are the most powerful points relative to eclipses. However, squares can also trigger things off as well. So it just depends on you and what's going on in your life and what's going on in your overall chart with all the different layers of things that are happening during this time, okay? Usually when a big event occurs in a person's life, it is not just one thing that reflects it astrologically. It is usually, in my experience, it's a number of things that all tie in together. Now, lunar eclipse, in this case, we have a full moon lunar eclipse. So the full moon, as we know, is the sun and moon opposite each other in the heavens. Check this out, by the way, just a side detraction again. This is smoky quartz. I just bought it the other day, and it's got a hint of citrine in it as well. I just absolutely love this. It feels amazing. So the sun and moon are opposite each other in the sky. That's what a full moon is always. A new moon is when the sun and moon are together in the sky. So a full moon, which happens every month, we know it stirs things up. It stirs the astral body, okay, which is the emotional body. Now, one thing I want to point out, all diseases, dis-ease, if you break that word down, dis-ease, okay, it could mean a lot of different things, but all diseases, as in physical ailments and things like that, they start off in the astral body, and then they work their way through into the physical body and the mental body. So why am I saying that? I'm saying that because lunar eclipses, they can be so powerful, not for every single person on the planet. It just depends on how this eclipse, what it connects to in your own chart. There will be a lot of people where the eclipse doesn't impact them. But if you're in a situation where this eclipse hits something personal in your chart, then the solar eclipse at the end of the month, towards the end of the month of June, 21st of June, that eclipse hits off something in your chart as well. And then if you're really unlucky, as it were, on the 5th of July, when we have another lunar eclipse, which is at 14 degrees of Capricorn. If you have planets in the, as I said, the signs that I named before, Sag, Gemini, Capricorn, Cancer, then these eclipses are lining up all throughout your chart, basically, and they're just hitting things off, right? So if you're in a situation in your life where you have critical things going on, it could be in your personal life or in your professional life, where there's turmoil, or there's disruption, or there's uncertainty, or there's crisis, or there's imminent change that's trying to come through. Well, these eclipses are going to activate those things without question. Solar eclipses and lunar eclipses are equally just as powerful. And this comes directly from Bernadette Brady, who is quite an authority on solar and lunar eclipses. That's a specialized field of hers. So I believe what she says to begin with. I studied with her many, many years ago. But that aside, and just in my own observations as well, see, solar eclipses seem to bring about cataclysmic type of events when a person is really out of touch with what they're supposed to be doing. And lunar eclipses affect more the astral body, the emotional body, but that too can result in external circumstances as well, okay? A full moon is always loaded with emotional charge and energy, always. But make it an eclipse, as it were, in this case it's a lunar eclipse, it has extra charge to it. This particular lunar eclipse, I just want to bring up the chart and start unpacking some of the core aspects to it, characteristics. I want to try and make this video a little bit shorter than normal, because I just need to move ahead with a very busy schedule I've got. So some of you will prefer that anyway, because some people like short videos. Okay, so here is the chart for the lunar eclipse happening on the 6th of June in the Southern Hemisphere, and it'll be on the 5th of June for the majority of my viewers that I know are actually in the Northern Hemisphere. So this chart is drawn up for Melbourne, so you don't need to necessarily pay attention to where everything is in the actual chart, but what we are, you can do that. If you wanted to look at the eclipse chart for your location, it's worth doing that, because that can show you some further points, further features, and specifically to the location in where you live, right? But leaving that aside for the moment, what we really want to unpack here is what are the aspects to this full moon. So before I do that, let me just go back a step. Now, a couple of weeks ago, it will be a couple of weeks ago when this full moon is exact, we had the new moon in Gemini, right? So it's always the case that we have a full moon, a new moon in Gemini. 14 days later, we're going to have a full moon in what? In Sagittarius, obviously. We're talking about the sun and the moon, new moon, Gemini. 14 days later, that moon moves away from the sun, and 14 days later, it is exactly opposite the sun, which is what we have here in this chart, right? So what started perhaps a couple of weeks ago during the new moon in Gemini, just to give some basic examples, it could be that you came across new information. It could be that certain aspects of communication in your life with very specific people were introduced or took a particular course. It could be that you started to study something. It could be that you started to look for very specific information relative to things that are going on in your life. But the new moon is always the birth, right? It's the seed that you plant. It's the desires behind what you're wanting to actualize. And now when we get to the full moon, which is the illumination, it's the expansion, illumination of what perhaps started at the new moon, okay, just to keep a short cycle in play here. And the full moon eclipse, which is in Sagittarius, well, Sagittarius is the archetype that correlates to the bigger picture view anyway. So put a lunar eclipse in the sign of Sag, we're going to get this enormous perspective, bigger picture, expansive view in our life relative to the new moon, where it was in your chart. So, and all things Gemini, information, facts, data, details, things like that, things you've been exploring, things that came into your field. And in Sagittarius, now we get the bigger view of what that was. Sagittarius is the archetype that correlates to truth. So some truth will now be illuminated in your life, in your eyes, relative to what you need to see regarding what's going on in your personal circumstances. It's also about your personal truth, right? So maybe something started a couple of weeks ago with your personal exploration of different bits of information and data that you came across, or that you were, actively seeking. And maybe there could have been a lot of confusion around what was right for you, what you needed to really absorb or assimilate into your being. And so now with the full moon in Sag, there's some drilling going on too. I'm really sorry. It's been crazy. It's been going on for the last 4 or 5 days. With the full moon in Sag, your personal truth can now be totally seen if you have the eyes to see that. And what I mean is your third eye, your intuition. Sagittarius is the right brain, that the hemisphere on the right-hand side, which connects to our intuition. Third eye. The thing that's going to add a very complex layer into this full moon eclipse, it's going to bring in where there are troubled relationships. This full moon is really going to stir things up, okay? First of all, Venus is in Gemini and retrograde. She went retrograde on the 12th of May. And she's retrograde during this full moon eclipse, and she's conjunct the sun. So she's speaking to relationships and choices. Venus in Gemini conjunct the sun is opposite the moon, is relationship matters, the diversity of different relationships that we may want to explore, invite into our life, or the choices, the diversity of choices that we actually have. And the Sagittarius can actually shed some light and some truth into your current relationship or relationships, right? So the relationship component is very crucial during this full moon. So it's your personal truth in Sagittarius, finding that all expansive energy from within you to project a more expansive view and understanding of your own truth, your personal truth relative to your current relationship status or relationships. Also, this full moon is in a T-square with Ceres, Mars, and Neptune. Now this, I'm going to be honest, this is not an easy signature. First of all, Mars is at the midpoint of Ceres and Neptune. So we're talking about ray number 6 in terms of esoteric astrology. Ray number 6 rules Mars and Neptune, or those planets, that planetary combination, rule ray number 6. Ray number 6 is about devotion and idealism. And just to put that in real practical terms, when ray 6 is activated in a way through the personality, it's misguided devotion and loyalty to people that are not right for you. The series adds the component of loss and grief in some kind of way. And Ceres is very, very strong in this configuration right here. And they're all in Pisces. So Pisces can be total disillusionment and disappointment, as Neptune can be that. On the other hand, it's extremely idealistic and really struggles to see the truth of situations. So we've got this energy squaring this full moon. Mars and Venus are both planets to do with relationships, sexual energy as well. Neptune, the ultimate truth, source creation to all things. Mars-Neptune conjunction can be deceptive action. If I was going to use a simple phrase to describe the lower level, personality level of Mars-Neptune, it's dishonest action. So we have a mixture here of relationship matters being totally illuminated through this lunar eclipse, strong emotional astral stirring impact on the astral body through the full moon. And it's going to be about can I really stand in my own personal truth, Sag, and surrender Neptune, Pisces, to an even higher truth where the divine can actually assist me in aligning myself at the moment relative to my path moving forward in the relationship I'm in, or maybe the relationship I need to pull away from. So this is relationship stuff, but it's got to do with information, knowledge, gossip, all sorts of stuff pertaining to Gemini that started a couple of weeks ago, misinformation, facts and details. And what are you going to do with that information now that you can see a greater version of the truth of that? And are you going to let this Mars-Neptune filter through the personality and just have that energy be completely misguided with your loyalty and devotion towards a person or a situation that's not going to lead you to what's going to serve you for your highest good? Or are you going to stay with that energy on the personality level, act deceptively, have somebody else act deceptively, or just stay in a state of total disillusionment about the truth and the reality of where you're at in your life at the moment relative to this relationship? If you're not in a relationship, then these energies will simply correlate again to your own personal highest truth, moon in Sag, and what is it that you need to surrender more into? Because Mars in Pisces, Mars is the planet of action, right? It's your own personal desires. It's how you attempt to attain your goals and actualize things out there. It's how you go and get things. But in Pisces, there is a call to having to have to surrender the will to a higher will. Neptune, Pisces, the highest will. And Pluto is the highest will as well. So Mars is the lower will. So in Pisces, we have to surrender. It might be a time where we feel compelled or driven to really take, action towards something specific that's happening at the moment that could be very, very challenging. And maybe we're just not able to see it very, very clearly, even though this full moon can give us that truth. We have to surrender the lower will desires and what they're trying to project in order to activate that higher truth that's trying to come through that Neptune in Pisces here. The series there relating to grief and loss might be the end or the loss of a relationship, or an ideal that you had about something in your life relative to relationships as well. So you might just have to surrender to letting something go that you thought was completely perfect for you or was the ideal for you, but now you realize that it wasn't, it isn't. And you have to surrender. That's Pisces, it's surrender, period. Also, Pisces, Neptune correlate to the immune system. And given everything that's going on, one thing that doesn't seem to be spoken about nearly enough is, we've had this lockdown, we've had, the gyms shut down, all of that. The only thing that I've really cared about personally is the gym. I couldn't care less about restaurants and, bars and whatever. But I have been annoyed about the gym because it's something that is a big part of my life, just being able to have that kind of outlet and activity. So, in amongst this, wash your hands, stay inside, keep your social distance. There's been virtually no wisdom or knowledge, being offered and given, but I'm talking about by mainstream, of course, about strengthening and building our immune system. Mars in Pisces can bring up some matters around the immune system, especially as this Mars climbs to forming this conjunction with Neptune, which is going to be later in the month of June, right? So they're just some other side notes to consider as well. Okay. So really, the month of June is huge. I'm going to come back and just talk about some other things around the month of June. But really today, all I wanted to do was just to give some pretty direct and clear pointers about what this full moon eclipse is really about. And I feel I have done that. So I'm going to just quickly looking here to see if there was anything I left out. No, that's it. Okay, so just to recap, what started a couple of weeks ago prior to the 5th and 6th of June, some perspective of truth will be gained about that now. You can either tune into that truth and accepting and surrendering what you need to surrender into, or you can give your energy and action and attention in a misguided way to people or situations that will not result well for you. It's up to you. But certainly relationship matters are highly triggered during this time. And when Neptune's involved, there's almost always an experience of disappointment that can come along if we are projecting it through the personality level, meaning that we just have these high ideals and expectations and the reality just it doesn't match. Furthermore, that the surrendering is about surrendering to the divine will. Neptune, divine spirit. So if we try and project our ego through this Mars, it's a T-square, right? So there's tension. We're talking about Mars square the moon, Mars square the sun. Neptune square the moon, Neptune square the sun. Ceres doing the same thing. It's a square aspect, meaning it provokes action. It's very dynamic and it can promote conflict as well. It just depends how we work with this energy, how realistic and honest we are with ourselves and our life situation, and how willing and able we are to surrender to the divine will and accept the truth of what's being illuminated, shining right in our eyes. That's what full moons do. And later in the month, we're going to have another conjunction between Pluto and Jupiter as well. But I'll talk about that in another video. What was the date of that? Yeah, 30th of June. So the end of June, that conjunction, that'll be the second conjunction, the second hit, and then there'll be a third hit around about the 3rd of November of this year. So June is huge. It's packed with retrogrades, Mercury, Neptune, Venus goes direct. We have the solstice, solar eclipse. We have this lunar eclipse. And then on the 5th of July, we have another lunar eclipse. So these eclipse energies are absolutely going to stir and heighten things up. So whatever is really critical will, it's just going to be amped up. And it's always going, we do have choice. We do have choice, and our choice is largely on how we respond to things as opposed to react. So I'll leave it there. It's a short and sweet one today. And I'll see you guys very soon with further updates regarding the month of June. And I also want to talk about transiting Neptune for people who have it on the top part of their chart or the bottom part of their chart or on the descendant. I did a video with transiting Neptune on the ascendant. There were a lot of people that are going through that, so thank you for your appreciation, and I'm happy that it offered you some insight, and I will try and follow that through with Neptune on the other parts of the chart as well. So happy lunar eclipse, and I hope that you can find that ability to really surrender in what's asking you to surrender at that point. It's really important. It's really, really important. Okay, much love and blessings, and see you soon. Bye.